for a little fellow to wear a mask. The others on our team in conjunction with the employees over at the Peninsula Health Department. And social distancing seems to be the question that we get most often. It's an interesting question. We've had it asked in a lot of different ways from a lot of different folks. And we try to respond to the feedback we get and questions, not only to that individual, but also to the general public, because if somebody's thinking about it, others, or somebody's asking it, others may be thinking about it. So we've added this to our frequently asked questions, been there for a long time, why we require the social distancing. This is very clearly all over the Center for Disease Control's website. There's no mention of anything other than the 6 feet of social distancing. And so we've followed that guidance from the beginning. But you'll recall there was a document circulated from the American Association of Pediatrics in July that indicated while wearing masks, it's safe for schools to allow students to be within 3 feet of each other, which would be a game changer, quite honestly, for how many students we can allow in school at any given time or in any given classroom. We have worked, and we are required to work directly with our local health division, who works under the umbrella of the Virginia Department of Health. And this is a letter that, in clarification, I asked for in writing. And you can see here directly from the director of the Peninsula Health Division that, and I asked, in reference to the letter, the white paper circulated in the summer from the American Academy of Pediatrics, suggests that minimum 3 feet distancing only for those school settings that do not have the capacity to adhere to the 6 feet distancing without drastically limiting the number of students who could attend school. And that's paraphrasing from that white paper circulated this summer. However, we do not recommend this practice. Any distancing less than 6 feet poses an increased risk of exposure and infection and a greater number of contacts who will be subject to quarantine. This in turn raises the risk of outbreaks and subsequent school reclosures. We know that maintaining the distance of at least 6 feet reduces the risk of COVID-19 transmission and infection. It's very cut and dry from their perspective. So since we get enough feedback and questions about that, we thought it was important to share that tonight. You all have a copy of the letter in its entirety in your packet. As always, we go through these numbers. These are current numbers we've given you every time. As of today, there are 119 lab confirmed cases of COVID in the city of Poquoson, and that's up from our last presentation of 89 cases in Poquoson. So we are seeing an increase in the city of Poquoson. And you'll see the Peninsula data as well as the Hampton Health District. They are separated in their data points, but we, in these next couple of slides, have them combined because we do look closely at all 6 divisions on the peninsula, because about 51% of our staff lives in those areas outside of Poquoson. You'll see the case positivity also was around 33.9%, and it's up to 4.8 as of today. These are rates of cases per 100,000. Again, this is a familiar slide to you on the board. You've seen this at every presentation. And you'll just notice from September 14th, when we started presenting this data, through today, November 17th, you'll see that increase. I won't read that to you, but these are numbers that we watch and monitor closely. Now drilling down to the peninsula specifically, these 6 divisions, the Peninsula Health Department has encouraged us to look at these 5 bullet points, and I won't read them to you because, again, you're very familiar with this slide. We've shown it every time. But this is our guiding practice for trying to look at the case burden decreasing over 2 weeks and the case positivity rate remaining below 10%, according to the Virginia Department of Health. And then, of course, the World Health Organization recommends 5% or lower. What happened a month ago, prior to our board meeting, is the Virginia Department of Health worked in collaboration with the Center for Disease Control to start publishing a new database and dashboard on the VDH website that shares a 14-day running trend of the two important numbers that school divisions and other organizations look at as we decide what kind of transmission of COVID is happening in our communities. And those two numbers are what's known as case burden or transmission rate and case positivity rate. And so you'll see just some trends there. As of today, combining all 6 divisions in the peninsula, we're at 129 cases per 100,000 and have been increasing for the last 14 days. The mean positivity rate is right at 4.7. Again, it's under that 5-point threshold, which is a good sign for us. That's a key indicator. And you'll notice that that number has toggled up and down over the course of the time we've been sharing these numbers. When we first started talking about this with you folks in August, it was at 7%. So that number is actually lower than it was when we were first having these conversations. However, there is an increase because when we last reported at our last board meeting, we had dropped to 2.8%. I did want to mention we are seeing now, which has changed since our last meeting, quite a few cases being reported around the peninsula in local schools, whereas before we only knew of positive cases, at least in private schools on the peninsula. This is a snapshot from a slide you've seen many times, the current data. A daily rate of case burden is right around 8.2, and that number has been as high as 10 point something during this process of us opening schools, and we've seen that number as low as in the 3s. So that number has fluctuated, and typically for Poquoson shows as a fluctuating. If you'll read over, it's hard to read this slide. On the side there, you'll see that it's considered a fluctuating number because it does go up and down pretty radically because of our small numbers. 1 or 2 cases can shift our numbers pretty quickly. And then the other case positivity rate, again, these are daily rates, not the 14-day trend. We are around 2.3. You'll see the trend. I won't read them to you, but you see we've been moderate, low, back and forth in both of those areas over the last 90 days. That's the old system that I just shared with you, and I continue to share that because it does give you an indication of what's happening daily on the peninsula and in Poquoson. The new data that we started sharing with you last month that is now available on the VDH website that shares a 14-day trend of data, which is much more accurate than the spikes up and down of the daily numbers. It's a 14-day trend, and this is the chart that's used. And you'll notice they color-code it, which makes it very easy to read and understand. We definitely want green and yellow. We don't like school bus orange and red. So that chart is the one that now becomes the magic numbers that we're watching, and you'll get more familiar with that as we go through. As of today, we are at 123.1 cases per 100,000 in the city of Poquoson, and that puts us at what the CDC calls a higher risk of transmission. Now again, remember back to the chart, there's lowest, lower, moderate, higher, and highest. They have encouraged us not to make decisions on that one number. What they recommend is that you combine the two numbers because both are important. So the second number, the case positivity rate, and again, this is not a daily rate, this is a 14-day trend, is at 4.8, which is, back to our chart, puts us in a lower risk category. We want to stay in that lower risk category, and we hope that happens. So as you combine those two numbers, we land in Poquoson in what folks would call a moderate risk of transmission when you compare the case burden to the case positivity rate. If there's a discrepancy between the two, you pick the one in the middle. It's the average, which puts us in a moderate rate of transmission for COVID spread in the city of Poquoson. Now, the other important thing is we watch the numbers, as I keep saying, around the peninsula, and looking at those numbers, they're in a similar category. None of the areas in the peninsula have spiked beyond those ranges as of now. Now, what you'll see, if you look at a heat map that we'll show you in our workshop later, you'll see that some areas on the other side of the tunnel, for example, have slipped over into the highest risk red category. And that's when folks need to start getting a little nervous about transition plans with bringing kids in school. So just to keep that in mind, that's where we are right now. The other part of our challenge, we look at the safety numbers, and the next thing we look at is staffing and scheduling. We've said this all along. In order to bring kids in school, we have to be able to staff it, we have to be able to schedule it, and we have to be able to ensure that there are safety numbers that warrant it. Currently, we have about 25 secondary staff members who may have a qualifying reason to access one of the available leave options, and we've talked about those leave options over time. Those staff members are not currently using those leave options because they're delivering instruction virtually. So once we toggle students back to school, which is coming up very quickly, then these 25 employees have access to use certain leave options that have already been requested and vetted by our HR department and attorney. When students return, some teachers will have to then, those teachers and others, if a teacher is on quarantine, for example, which we have employees there now, those teachers would have to live stream that instruction from their home, quarantined, into the building where we have students sitting in desks with an employee hired to supervise them. So there are some challenges, and we're working through how we'll be able to provide that coverage now. Part of the challenges we shared with you at the last meeting that we would be working through as we transition secondary students to school. These are this is a kind of an overwhelming slide, but I thought it would be important to update you on the very minute details of what we're dealing with. This is, as my grandmother used to say when she didn't see real well and she was doing tight work, she was doing sewing work, she said, "This is tight work, Artie. This is really tight work." So that's what we're sharing tonight is the tight work that we're in the process of doing, and every detail matters. There's 44 staff members who have had to quarantine due to possible exposure. We have 9 staff members quarantined due to confirmed exposure to a person who's tested positive for COVID. We have 6 symptomatic staff members who are quarantining pending their test results. So they have the symptoms and their doctors have ordered a COVID test. And as you know, following those tests, there are different types of COVID tests. Some come back as rapids, and you'll get them back the next day, or some days, even we've seen them come back in the same day. And then some they take as much as 10 days to get back. So that time frame is getting better. We're finding them coming back more quickly. But we do have a time frame from when there's a possible exposure until we get the results back where folks are quarantining. We have 7 staff members working from home until members in their household get test results back. We have 4 classrooms that have been temporarily closed. 1 from a confirmed exposure to COVID, and 3 awaiting the test results from symptomatic individuals. Right now, as we speak, Poquoson Schools has 2 positive cases in our schools. So this is the early stages. I do want to say that these are the extraordinary things that are going on while that's happening. We're still teaching school. We're able to toggle back and forth. We've got live streaming going on from home into class. We've got kids shifting over to virtual. We have all of our extraordinary sanitation work going on whenever there's in addition to what we're doing, we go in and re-sanitize those spaces. There's a lot of communication going back and forth between both A groups and B groups because they share a common teacher. In these cases, we have changed the instructional delivery, which requires parents to shift their child care services. So there's challenges through this, and of course it does create some anxiety for all the folks involved, teachers, parents, students, staff. Before we move on to the next step of this, we are moving forward as of right now with our plan to transition more students back to school. This plan is complicated. It's extremely thorough. We put together, as we told you last time, we met a team of educational professionals in the community to vet this plan, to work through all the details of it, and those folks have worked very hard, and I want to publicly thank them, all the members of our secondary transition team, along with, I would be remiss if every time I have an opportunity to speak, I don't thank our central leadership team, Dr. Fox and Mr. Pappas and Ms. Woodruff, and also joining our team often, working close with us is Ashley Ryer and Emily Forrest, and of course our principals who work very, very hard to make all this happen. All four of our principals have worked day and night to put this together. So this just doesn't happen. It's been, what you're getting ready to see is the product of a lot of hard work to bring as many kids as we can physically do as quickly to school as we can, as to school as quickly as we can. And I get asked, why can't we do it sooner? Why were these dates picked? And the short answer is, for all of these reasons you're getting ready to see, it takes a lot of puzzle pieces put together to fit perfectly to make this happen. I use this analogy a lot when people ask. When we split the K-5s, we took grade levels, and that was not easy work, but we split them in half, roughly around the middle of the alphabet, and with some few exceptions, that kind of worked. We're having to do this on the secondary level by splitting each classroom, dividing half of the class to come one day and the other half to come the other day, and having to make sure that we don't have any classes that have more students in it at any point during the day than that particular space can handle while social distanced. So that's just one piece of this. Then we're going to transport them on a bus. So our transportation team has, from our survey that went out, we just received all of the information, have been hard at work building bus schedules, also social distance, because you can only have so many students on a bus. All these little details, this tight work my grandmother spoke about, is what we've been doing. And I failed to mention, but we did last time, a key component of this is our students with special needs. All of their IEPs have to be rewritten, re-examined, and temporary plans in place. And that is happening as we speak, and that will get right to the finish line when we open school. So we really can't bring our kids in any faster, and we're hopeful that we can slide into home plate on those dates we've identified ready. We've got a lot of training to do especially for our high school folks who are going to be, you're getting ready to see, implementing a brand new modified block schedule, which is a much better fit for a hybrid schedule especially. You're going to see the whys about that today, but our team of secondary transition team worked very hard to put this together, and we think it's going to be really, really good. We're confident it's going to be good for our kids. Dr. Fox is going to share all the the nuts and bolts of this, and I appreciate it. I know this is a lot of information, but I hope it's helpful as we move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tillett. Good evening to the school board. Mr. Tillett referenced our secondary transition committee. We just wanted to thank them and just remind you who was on that staff. They're still meeting. We have some more things that we're still working through. But obviously it's composed of a variety of different staff members. Our principals and our school board member staff continue to work through all the transition details. We do have on that committee, we have our general ed teachers, some special education teachers, our school counseling directors, our activities director, our instructional resource, technology resource teachers who've been invaluable in this process. And then we have our PEA president is also a part of that committee. We are meeting separately with choral, band, and PE teachers just because their classes are so specific to some of the requirements and things that we need to do. So we'll meet separately with them to work through details at both the middle and the high school level. And we continue, as Mr. Tillett said, to monitor the daily health data, our staffing needs, and looking at the different scheduling drafts that we have. As you are aware, we've published the dates of the return, so we'll have grades 6 and 7 are going to be returning on Monday, December 7th, and grades 8 through 12 will return on Monday, January the 11th. What this does is this allows time for us to complete all of those things Mr. Tillett just referenced, and also to provide the training that's needed as we move forward to get teachers ready for this big shift, because it is a shift. They're going to be live streaming to some students, so they're going to have 2 groups of kids at one time. It also allows a period of time after 2 of our major holidays, Thanksgiving and our winter break. It gives us a week before we bring students back into the building. And that's just an extra safety precaution that's making teachers feel better. And it's going to help families as well. This also allows time, Mr. Tillett referenced those temporary learning plans or the TLPs that have to be rewritten with all of our special education staff, doing those with the parents and classroom teachers and administrators that have to be pulled to rewrite those. That is a time-consuming process. And we just wanted to share with you, in August when we had the family choice data, we had about a 65-35 split. 65% chose option number 1, the continuum, and 35% chose the virtual Poquoson online option. For our secondary schools with the update that we just did last week, you're looking at about a 70-30 split there as we move forward. So we'll see some more kids coming into the building. I want to walk you through, I'm just going to briefly, because all of this is online and it's been posted in our document, but right now this is the draft schedule for the middle school for 6th and 7th grade when they return in December, and there are some major changes here. The staff really worked hard to find a schedule that would work for kids and for teachers and for families. And what they've done is really created a masterful piece here that allows kids to get the things that they need in person and online, and accommodating both of our kids so that we can ensure that there's equity between the students who are sitting in class and the students who are at home in the Poquoson online program. So they're going to have 5 periods where they'll be in school on A or B days for those students that are getting in-person instruction, and then the students who are at home will be live streaming those 4 days a week. So all students are going to have 4 days of instruction for periods 1 through 5, which are going to consist of their core classes, so math, English, science, and social studies. The 5th period there will be their world language class, a reading workshop, and or a resource class. And for those students that don't have one of those 3 things, they'll get an academic advisory period, which we think will help fill in some of the gaps from being out of school since March. Students will then travel home, and then in the afternoons they'll have live sessions with their elective teachers. So students will have 2 live elective sessions every week. One will be in the afternoon and one will be on Wednesdays. And that schedule's published in detail. This is just sort of a combined, condensed version of that schedule. Very similar schedule for our 8th grade students, except you'll notice that the times are different because our 8th graders are following the high school bell schedule. So same model, same 5 periods, first thing throughout the day, and then they'll have their electives in the afternoons or on Wednesdays as they move through their schedule. So why and what does this do for our middle school students? What this does is it, again, provides live instruction 4 days a week for all students, whether they're at home or in person. Everybody's getting 4 days of instruction throughout the week. And then Wednesdays will have live instruction with those elective courses. and some of the other core courses, like some of our high school credit courses. They are managing, this helps us to manage the amount of screen time that our students get for both those Poquoson online students and the students in the A or the B group who are at home and are live streaming in. We worry too much about 7 hours. All of us have talked about sitting in meetings all day and how exhausting that is to be online all day. So this schedule compresses that time, and it gives us a really good chunk of time where kids can stay focused and be in contact live with teachers, and then have some non-screen time to do some things in the afternoons. Students, these schedules are going to change, and what the middle school is working exceptionally hard to do is not change the teachers, but to change the periods and when the students. So if you had English with Miss Lance first period, you might have English with Miss Lance fifth period now. They're going to work very, very hard to not make teacher changes. Will there be some? Inevitably, yes, but they're working very hard to not make that happen. The courses that they're enrolled in will stay. There are no changes to the students' courses. So if you had art, you're going to stay in art for if you're in 8th grade. We are looking to figure out that split for the A and the B day. Again, it's a little more complicated at the secondary level because it's period by period. It's not just for the whole day, and we have to accommodate those room sizes. So we're anticipating it being some kind of alphabet split. We can't tell you right now where that line will be drawn, but as soon as we do, we'll share that information. Most likely that will be the weekend for the 6th and 7th graders. It'll be the weekend after Thanksgiving because they will start their new schedules on Monday, November the 30th. So they'll need to know if they're an A or a B at that time. We are going to work hard at our middle school to keep those A and B days consistent for families with the K to 5 students, so that K to 8, if you have the same last name, you'll be attending on an A day or a B day. And we'll also work hard with siblings who might have different last names, like we did at the elementary level. We'll put you consistently on the same day with your K to 5 siblings for a household. We also, one of the big changes that we made here at the middle school level, and it's specific just to the middle school level, is it required us to do sort of a compressing of our 4 quarters into 3 marking periods. So we've compressed those and given the new dates, they're all in the document of when those new marking periods end and begin. The first marking period for our middle school students will end this Friday, and the second marking period will start for them next Monday. With that, because we went from 4 to 3, we had to make some adjustments with the grading as well. So you can see the percentages there. We've just taken it and divided it out equally across the year. So you'll see how each marking period will be calculated to get that final grade for the year. 6th graders on Monday, November 30th, they will transition to their 3rd quarter wheel class. Normally they have 4 wheel classes. We've condensed that down to 3. So they'll move into their 3rd quarter one that was assigned at the beginning of the year. Again, it won't change. It'll be the same one. It'll just move from 1st to 3rd. 7th graders will transition to their 2nd semester elective option. Again, it won't change. They'll just transition into that. And as I shared before, November 28th or 29th, the weekend after Thanksgiving, we're anticipating having those schedules available for students and families through PowerSchool. We'll let you know. There'll be an email that'll be sent out with that information so students can see what their new schedule is. They'll see if they're an A or a B day and go from there. And we wanted to share, because there is a calendar update this evening for the board with some changes, that one of those things that impacted the calendar was that we're not going to have first semester exams for high school credit courses at the middle school or courses at the high school. So that's just a quick overview of the middle school and where we're heading with them. High school schedule, this is draft. Dr. Sayak and I worked this morning. We're making some tweaks to this because we needed to make some accommodations for our governor school kids. So to the moms and dads and kids out there with the governor school schedules, we've made some tweaks to accommodate their schedule. And we'll publish that as soon as we get confirmation from the governor's school with a couple of details from them. But theirs is what we call a modified block. So it's a A-B block where you have odd periods on one day and even periods on the other day. Right now the periods are between 80 and 90 minutes. We're working out the details of just how long they will be to accommodate some regional programs. So you'll see on Mondays, the students, Group A students would be in person and they'll go with 1, 3, 5, 7. You'll notice that 7th is what you call a skinny period. It runs every day. It's shorter. It's only 55 minutes, but the students will attend that class every day. And then they'll go home, they'll have some time where they can finish any work that they might need to complete, and or they can stay for remediation with teachers if they need to. We're going to do some social emotional work with students, and then teachers will still have their office hours where they can be, bless you, available for students as needed. So that's just a quick look at the high school schedule and the changes there for that. And again, why these changes now? Again, this provides live instruction for all students 4 days a week. And again, the attempt here was to provide a schedule that made it more manageable for the students when they're online. So they're not online from 7 to 2, because again, we as adults would struggle with that. So we've compressed things and made it a little bit more manageable. The other thing that a block schedule does is it allows students to only concentrate on 4 classes a day instead of 7. And that's a huge benefit. So on Mondays, I'm only focused on 1, 3, 5, and 7. On Tuesdays, I'm going to focus on 2, 4, 6, and 7. So it allows me a little bit more time to toggle between those classes and focus. This was a unanimous decision by the secondary committee to move to a block schedule. They had a lot of discussion about it. A lot of schedules were thrown around and how and when and why, and this is where they landed, and it is supported by the high school staff. It also, one of the benefits of reducing the number of classes you have each day when you're in person is it reduces the numbers of transitions for students. So we're moving from 6 to 3. So instead of going from first to second, third to fourth, all those transitions means exposure, kids, teachers. We've cut that in half with this schedule, so now we only have 3 transitions during the school day when students are there for in-person. And the same is true for the high school. Theirs has dropped down to 4. Again, as I said earlier, we're working through some tweaks of the schedule to align the regional programs. We'll publish those schedules as soon as we can. Again, we're going to try to do the same thing at the high school with the alphabet dividing, into A and B groups. Most likely that information will be shared the week of January 4th when we come back. It's going to take us a little bit of time to sort those out because we are going to have to move classes at the high school just because some rooms are a little bit smaller than others. The other thing I forgot to mention, I apologize, is this schedule is a little bit different than the K-8 in that because we moved to the modified block, the students are it's AABB instead of ABAB. If you know, at the K-5 level, students, A day comes on Monday, and then B group comes on Tuesday, A group comes on Thursday, B on Friday. To accommodate to get a full schedule in over 2 days, this is AABB. So our A groups will come on Monday, Tuesday, and our B groups will come on Thursday, Friday. Right now, as Mr. Tillett said, we are working through all of the different professional learning that our teachers require, not only for the live streaming and being able to manage those 2 different aspects at one time in the classroom. We're working with the high school on transitioning to teaching in the block because it is a little bit different. You have more time with kids face-to-face, so you've got to structure that time differently. We're working on the classroom management aspects of live streaming. How do I monitor my kids who are here on a monitor, and then I keep track of my kids who are in person at the same time? We're working with them on different tools, technology tools and tips for live streaming and for student engagement. We're teaching them all how to use their interactive projectors that they have in their classrooms in a more efficient way. And then just planning for instruction. We've got a plan to make that adjustment from all virtual to now in person, so that requires additional planning time and collaboration with teachers. We've done some readjusting of the marking period, so they have to do a little bit of planning adjustment there. And we want to update materials on Canvas, so we need to provide teachers with time to do that. As far as technology goes, every teacher's been given a second monitor that's been placed in their classroom because that's going to help with keeping an eye on the students who are online as well as the students who are in class. We've also purchased splitters, which allow them to use all of the devices, including their interactive projector and their monitors, in different ways, and that's going to be very helpful for them. Our ITRTs are working with each teacher to go into their classroom and look at where they need their monitors placed, how do they use their projector, how do they use their document camera, and they're setting it up so that it works for that teacher's particular teaching style and helping them get comfortable with the arrangement that they have in their room. And then they're going to be conducting some practice sessions. We got online last week with a couple of teachers and they showed us how they're going to teach, and they're different. We saw 3 teachers who teach differently and their setups were different, but we were watching to see how the cameras looked. we were the online students who were at home. Everything was clear and we could hear the sound very well. So we're optimistic that this will move forward as we've planned. Special education, we've mentioned this a number of times about our TLPs that are currently being written. They're in progress right now to be ready for December for the middle school and January for 8 through 12. All of those, again, require individual meetings with a staff member, a special ed, a teacher, an administrator, and a parent. So we just want to thank all of those people for the time that they've been putting in, because this is a time-intensive process, because it's not easy. And we just want everybody to know we appreciate their time, including the parents who are coming in for these meetings and have had to several times because of just the way they have to be written. We also are being very diligent to make sure that we're meeting our December 1 child count so that we can fund special education, because I know you guys would like us to do that. So we're being very careful and diligent, and again, that's one of the reasons for the December 7th date, is so that teachers and special ed case managers only have to rewrite those plans once instead of twice. And that's huge in their world. It saves a tremendous amount of time for everybody. In terms of health and safety, we went through a lot of this last time with you. We just want to update you. All we're basically doing here is changing the verbs from we will to we are. So we're working through the electronic daily screening. We'll have that set up for our middle school students when they come back through the RUVNA, where parents will get the text message and they do the health screener for their child each day. We are working with our custodial services to adjust the cleaning and the sanitizing schedules. Staff are working through their protocols of what students will do in each class and what the expectations are. We're adding additional signage throughout the building to remind students to stay physically distanced, which way to walk in hallways and things like that, just so that we can try to keep things as safe as we can. We've ordered additional materials and supplies for classrooms because students can't share things. So we have to have individual pieces in the classroom. And then we're also providing additional PPE for teachers in the classroom, such as wipes and gloves and masks, and then anything else that teachers might want. We've had some that have asked for plexiglass dividers or face shields. We're providing those for teachers as we move through. Breakfast and lunch, if you all recall, this year it's free to every student all year. In K to 12. So we're working through a grab and go process at both the middle school and the high school. So when students come in the morning, they can grab a free breakfast, and when they leave, they'll grab a lunch to take home with them. And all of those will be free throughout the school year for all students. Our meal distribution continues. So that students ages 1 to 18, and it's every Monday and Thursday at the primary school. Any family can come and receive meals that will take them from Monday to Thursday and from Thursday to Monday. So we encourage you to take part in that, and again, that is free. Transportation, Mr. Tillett mentioned, we put that survey out. It's due on Sunday, so for those secondary families who haven't completed that survey, we ask if you could please take a minute to do that, because that information is helpful. And we need that regardless of whether you plan to ride a bus or whether you plan to bring your child to school. We need to know both ways so that we can plan our routes and make sure we don't have too many students on a bus at one time. November 23rd, they're going to begin, that's next Monday, they'll start developing and building those routes for our secondary students based on the responses from the survey. And then the last slide I have for you this evening, our VTSS teams at each school are working on creating welcome back orientation videos for the students so that they'll view those prior to their return so they can get a sense of what to expect. For our 6th and 7th graders, it'll show the elementary school where their classes will be, and it'll show the portable classrooms. I think, Mrs. Bunting, we're going to have a drone fly over so that they can see an aerial view of the portable classrooms, so that'll be new for students, so we want them to be able to find their way around. Our 8th graders will be new to the high school, so we'll have some videos showing them where their classes will be in this section for them. It'll outline some of the student expectations in school and on the bus. Our health and safety mitigation strategies for students, we'll talk and walk them through that. How do you wash your hands properly? How do you take care of your mask? Those kinds of things. And then our restroom protocols, because obviously we can't have 10 students in a restroom at one time, so we'll walk them through those processes. We'll talk about arrival and dismissal. We will be taking temperatures when students arrive to school. And then breakfast and lunch and how they gather those materials when they come in and when they leave. So that's that, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Tillett.
Thank you, Dr. Fox. As you can see, a lot goes into this process. And again, we want to thank everybody that's touched this in some way. It's been a lot of heavy lifting, a lot of hard work, a lot of sweat and tears, but we're there. We feel confident we're going to transition our middle school kids in 6th and 7th graders very soon after Thanksgiving, and then our 8 through 12 students right after Christmas. So we want to, of course, end with another quote from Dr. Fauci that we mentioned last time, but I think it is another good point to end this reopening presentation. The bottom line is everybody should try within the context of the level of infection that you have to get the kids back to school. But the primary consideration should be the safety, health, and welfare of the children as well as the teachers, and the potential secondary effects on parents and family members. That's again our goal. We want them all back. We want them back as quickly and as safely as we can. Questions?
I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still looking for volunteers? Because I know you sent the email out asking for volunteers to monitor classrooms.
We're looking for volunteers / substitutes. They kind of are one and the same for us. A volunteer, in order to volunteer in a public school, you have to go through a process of vetting, and that includes background checks and all those. So we need folks who are willing to go through that process to help us, because we're going to need an extraordinary number of folks to make this all work. As you can see, if a teacher can't be in the classroom, we got to have someone else there. So absolutely. And we have seen a little uptick in folks from, we've sent out some stuff on social media. We've been campaigning very hard to get additional substitutes, and we need them. So spread the word. Oh, you had another question?
Yeah. Last question. So I saw where the time slot is, for lunch, and then you go into your next period. Have y'all determined what the average time for the last student drop-off is going to be?
Average time for the last student?
For the last student that's dropped off at their house, what that's going to be. If that's going to be, if they're going to be able to eat lunch and then go into their next period?
Yeah, we're running a grab-and-go process for the secondary kids for lunch. They grab their lunch and they go. So their classes after lunch will be virtual. So there won't be a time frame for lunch. They're on their own for lunch.
I have a quick question about the, you mentioned the 25 secondary staff members. The FFCRA expires December 31st, so what happens after that?
That's a good question, and we're monitoring that closely. All the indications are that it's going to be renewed. So we haven't heard officially, but everybody's planning toward that end. If it doesn't get renewed, then that's the end of that. That would be the end of that story if that doesn't get renewed. There's lots of talk about it in the superintendent threads. I haven't seen anything official come across. And of course, we're in transition on all levels, including the federal level. So a lot of that is federally controlled. So it's going to be interesting to see in transition what kinds of leave policies come out. But very good question.
I know Poquoson City Schools has been on the standard 7-period bell schedule for, I think, as long as Poquoson City Schools have been in existence. Our teachers have already had to go through a number of different changes to their daily schedules and learning Canvas for the first time, and now we're making a move on them to go to a modified block schedule. For someone that's not in education, that move from a 55-minute schedule to an hour and 20 minutes now poses some additional challenges. And I'm sure that part of the delay is allowing our teachers enough time to feel comfortable with that new modified block schedule. Do you feel as though that is a long-term, option that we will stay on a modified block schedule potentially next year once COVID passes, or if we'll go back to the 7-period schedule? That's
an excellent question, and one that we're going to monitor closely. I was surprised, to be honest with you, having gone from a 7-period day to a block and then to a hybrid model of scheduling where we combine the block and the 7-period and the traditional 180-day 50-minute class year long in a hybrid model. So I've transitioned multiple times myself, and I was very surprised in that meeting when the secondary teachers unanimously, not a dissenting vote, which was surprising, said this is the time to do this. So we took their lead. They worked very closely with the administration to build this model, and they feel good about it. And you see Dr. Sayek's head nodding. I would not have supported this because it is another move in the middle of all of this chaos. And I would have never come to town and said we ought to look at changing our schedule. But the teachers said let's do it. And they've been talking about this for some time. I know it was a hot topic in the last couple of years and got real close to trying to reach some consensus about transitioning to a modified block. There's a lot of advantages to it, but the short answer to its longevity, it will be its success determines its longevity. So if this works and our teachers feel good about it, our parents feel good about it, and most importantly, our kids are successful in this model, I think it's got legs. I think it will last. If it doesn't, if we find that this is not working for any number of reasons, we can easily blame it on COVID and toggle back to the 7-period day. We're getting good at blaming everything on COVID, so just add it to the list. But very good question.
A couple questions. The first, the 25 employees, is that an even split middle school and high school? Do you know the breakdown or? I know that's
Dr. Fox, do you know off the top of your head? We've been looking at secondary together, so I can't really, and I'm learning people, so when they mention a name, I don't generally know. But that's a very good question, and I'll get you an answer to it.
The second one, I noticed that there's no first semester exams. Any update about SOLs for this year?
Very good question. Two good questions. The first is our secondary staff, again, part of this transition team, agreed that we would suspend mid-year exams.
And the high school kids will be very excited.
They're going to be excited about that. And for this may be you folks out there, and it's another thing. Back to Jeremy's question, we can talk about this for the future. They're not required. We have had them in Poquoson, I've learned, for a lot of years. In Dare, we got rid of midterm exams a few years back. So there's some arguments on both sides of that, and we're going to let, again, our staff drive that discussion. But we are suspending them for obvious reasons now as we transition to this new schedule. Plus, it gains us 3 days of instructional time back, and every second of instruction is important now as we're catching up from March. Back to your second question. Last update we had on SOLs is they're still on for the required SOLs. We had hoped that we'd see some change in that, and I can say that all of the superintendents are campaigning. The Virginia Association of Educators, I can't think of all the groups, but I don't know of one who's not campaigning for this. Unfortunately, this is going to be a decision made on the federal level. But again, because all of those tests are required in our approved Plan for Every Child Succeeds Act, which is a federal government requirement. So in order for us to change our plan in the state of Virginia, it has to be approved by the federal government, Department of Education. So all 50 states are now struggling with this same thing. Part of ESSA is that there has to be standardized testing that measures student learning. So in the state of Virginia, SOLs is that example, or that portion of meeting ESSA. And in our superintendent call this morning, there was some wiggle room that we'll be reporting back out to you in December that's coming from non-SOL tests that the state has in place that we will have some autonomy with, and we'll give you a very thorough update, namely in history and the writing test. So there's some wiggle room that we have in that, so we're going to put that to our staff, vet it. We'll have some autonomy and some options to make, and we'll do a thorough report in December on that. But very good question. Other questions?
I've got one more, Mr. Shelley. So we've seen the statistics regarding the possible exposure and possible cases, some of which are taking days to get back. Are we recommending or trying to push folks towards getting those rapid tests done on a quicker basis so that we can get the information necessary
That's
to
a-
make the right decisions on some of these, because in instances where folks are going hybrid, there have been cases where, parents are worried and about the health and well-being of their student. They're worried about themselves. And some of these cases are taking days to get back when access to the rapid test seems somewhat readily available. I know we're limited in the areas where those rapid tests are being done, but
Yeah.
and I don't know if there's a way for us to regulate and direct those folks to those rapid testing sites. But
That's a good question. Unfortunately, that conversation is between the patient and their doctor, and so we're totally out of that loop. But secondly, and this is just, I'm going to take my superintendent hat off and put a hat I don't deserve to wear, and that is I'm going to make a medical statement. We have had some of those tests just in my amateur work through contact tracing of the rapid tests that have come back false. Now, I don't know the science behind that, and Christy's shaking her head, and she would be able to speak in a much more educated way than me about this, but we've had a couple of cases at least where those rapid tests have come back in quickly but falsely. And so that discussion is between a medical provider and their patient, and we don't really have any control about it. But good question. Yep. Any other questions before we move on?
I think it's important to note that going back to the 25 teachers exercising that option, it is much more difficult for a system our size to absorb that type of impact than it is, say, Richmond or James City County, Newport News. It is very easy for them to do without 25 teachers, not so much for us. It is a different world when we're talking about that number of faculty.
Absolutely. Very good point. And one we've been struggling with is that, our size is an advantage in a lot of ways, but in this case, one is a lot. 25 is extraordinary. So we're working through that. We want to provide every advantage to our staff who are in this with us together, but at the same time, our primary goal is to safely get our kids back to school. Yeah, but very good point. Yeah. Other questions?
And teachers do actually have, I should know that as a good school board member.
155?
So that's
Somewhere right around that?
That's 20%.
25%.
So that's 20% of the staff.
20%?
170, okay. 170 teachers.
Okay.
Okay.
You wanna-
We are still looking for a Poquoson Middle School nurse.
Nurse, we need a nurse and lots of substitutes. Yep. Spread the word. Mr. Chairman, if you want me to toggle right
I was
on
going
into...
to say, while you're up there, go ahead and hit the VHSL if you'd like.
All right. Just a little backdrop. As you recall, the Virginia High School Athletic, or Virginia High School League, I have to go back and forth between the North Carolina High School Athletic Association, which I've been a part of for 30 years, and the Virginia High School League, which are very similar organizations. But I have to give some props to the Virginia League. They have done a really incredible job of homework, research from over the summer when they realized there was going to be a suspension of sports in the fall. How to get kids back into school. And so the document that you have in your packet and is on our website and shared all over the state of Virginia, about 28, 29 pages, is a very, very thorough plan. It covers safety mitigation strategies. It covers how the details of the game will be played, through and including handshakes. I mean, it covered jump balls, every detail of the athletic world as we now plan to start winter sports December the 7th. I will say that this plan has also been vetted and endorsed by the Virginia Department of Health, the Virginia Department of Education, and the Governor's Office. So that's the three big ones when you're talking about high school sports. There are some divisions around us that you have inevitably heard about who are have decided or are back and forth on the fence about whether to engage this plan in December. we in Poquoson think that kids ought to be engaged in something healthy. That's our position. And so what you're going to hear in over the next few minutes is a presentation by Dr. Ratliff, whom I've asked to help lead this in conjunction with Dr. Syak and our activities director, Kenny Bennett. And I want to start off by thanking the three of them and our entire coaching staff and all the folks who have been involved in this. But those three folks have worked very diligently and closely, not just recently, but since the summer, in how we can get our kids back playing sports. It started with early on when the league allowed for conditioning. We've had our kids on a rotated schedule in the weight room for close to a month now, or over a month now, working out, getting prepared for sports. We think this is good for kids. So what you're going to hear, and I want to thank again Dr. Ratliff. I failed to mention him earlier when I was calling names. I'm sure I missed somebody else that I shouldn't have, but he's also part of our key leadership team and has worked very hard on this, and also as a former high school principal, or I call recovering high school principal. He is well versed in high school sports. So he's going to come in and share the details of this plan. He won't go through every piece of it, but there's some parts of this that are overlaid with our plan, where he's going to give you some examples of this, what the VHSL plan looks like, and here's what we're doing in response to that. My last piece I'm just going to mention is the governor's order does change one thing about this plan that all the folks, including Billy Hahn and the folks from the VHSL, shared with us this morning. It changes the number of spectators, but it does not change the number of participants. And Dr. Ratliff will share some of that. The number of participants are not governed by the 25. So, Dr. Ratliff.
Good evening. Tonight I'm going to review a little bit about the VHSL return to participation guidelines and how the norms fit into what we'll be doing with Poquoson and how we can actually make athletics go through. First, I want to go ahead and review the considerations that are embedded within the guidelines. Just the same as with students and staff, when they come to school on a daily basis, we have to do the health checks with athletes prior to beginning practice or beginning any kind of contests or events. We are considering using the RUBNA screener for that. We haven't really come to a final consensus about the dynamics of how that will work. But at least in the beginning, the trainer will be the person that's doing the health screenings for the students. There's a real emphasis in the VHSL documents on hand washing education, social distancing, and face coverings when feasible. Staff members have to ensure that the facilities have been properly sanitized when we host events. Staff members also have to make sure that we have plenty of hand sanitizer, disposable face masks, anything like that when we're any PPE while we are hosting events. Essentially, when you go somewhere for an athletic event, the burden is on the place that you go to make sure that all of the mitigation factors have been put in place for everyone. Staff members, when I'm referring to staff members in this context, basically your coaches, any of the people that are working the athletic event, any of your custodial staff, the activities director, the trainer, basically all of them will have to make sure that the facilities are disinfected or following any of your practices or events. Going into it, they should be coming into a disinfected environment from the start, because, for example, if you're having a school day and you're in the gym or the weight room, whatever would be going on through the school day is going to be taken care of during the day. So after hours, when the kids came in, they would be coming into an environment that's already clean and ready to go. Social distancing of 6 feet must be maintained whenever possible, and that includes all areas, even the areas such as sidelines, dugouts, and any of the like compared to that. No hugging, no high fives, no handshakes, no fist bumps. Some of those things probably will be some of the more difficult things that the kids and probably adults have to struggle with to make sure that they don't do. All pre- and post-game handshakes will be eliminated. Pre-game meetings will be eliminated whenever they're possible. In those instances that they are not possible, then only the necessary or the minimum amount of people will participate in that, and they will adhere to the social distancing guidelines while they're doing that. Post-game award ceremonies will be eliminated. While on the sidelines, social distancing must be maintained. And you can extend the bench areas for outdoor activities. For example, in football, one of the mitigation strategies is to extend the bench area, I think, to the 20-yard line on either end. So when it's talking about extending the bench areas, just basically giving you more room for your teams to be able to stand. Indoor activities may require the use of bleachers for athletes to maintain social distancing while on the sidelines. You can't necessarily extend a bench on a basketball court because you don't have the room. So the recommendations are then to use the bleachers and distance yourself in using the bleachers that are behind where the athletes would sit. The fans or spectators have to remain 6 feet apart for family members that do not live, or immediate family members that do not live with one another, and your facility limits are going to be enforced by the VHSL. Actually, when you listened and watched some of the material that VHSL's put out, they very clearly said that all of their norms and guidelines must be followed very rigidly in order to be able to participate. Participants and coaches should bring their own water bottles, bring and use their own water bottles, and there shouldn't be any kind of sharing of that going on. If there's a positive COVID test, schools have to follow the health and safety plans and the Virginia Department of Health guidelines that have been established. So essentially, what we would do in athletics is we're going to follow the same plan that we would in the school. So we're going to react in the same way, whether it is on an athletic field or in the school, in the classroom. Those guidelines that we've established, which have been good mitigation factors to this point, we're going to follow. Any score sheets, books, events, people keeping books at the events should only be handled by that scorer, and any of the writing implements should be cleaned and sanitized if they're handled by anyone other than that scorer. Prior to and after games, individuals should refrain from congregation in group settings. Each student needs to be responsible for their own equipment and supplies. No clothing should be shared. And students will do that a lot, and I think it's probably a very common thing. So that's something that coaches will have to emphasize. No community laundering, and that really is a reference in a lot of different sports. You have coaches that will wash all of the uniforms because they want to preserve the color in them, or they want to make sure and wash them the right way to get them clean and preserve the color. But there really isn't the option for community laundering within this. There was some guidelines that you could follow to still do that, but we went the route of just saying there will be no community laundering. Also, workout clothing and towels should be washed daily, something that we'll absolutely have to stress to the kids. Hand sanitizer needs to be readily available. Athletes need to tell coaches if they don't feel well. Again, I think that's something that we will have to stress to the kids to make sure that they do. It's just not always in their nature to do that. If they do not feel well or experiencing symptoms, or someone that is close to them is experiencing COVID symptoms, then they should stay home. They shouldn't come to practice. The same thing that we tell kids when coming to school. If you're sick, if you're symptomatic, if anyone you are around is sick, then you should stay home. You shouldn't come. And I think the real key emphasis there is we have to make sure that the kids understand they're not going to be penalized for something like that. One person could easily take out an entire team for a period of time if we're not careful in what we do. Mouth guards should stay in mouths throughout the entire competition. That's going to be very difficult, I think, for some. If they do come out, your hands should be washed and sanitized, then the mouthpiece should be washed and sanitized, and then it goes back in, and then your hands are cleaned again. So as much as possible, we need to try to keep mouthpieces in children's mouths for the length of the contest. Coaches and administrators must clearly communicate all the guidelines to students and parents. We typically do, prior to the season, the parent meetings and things going on like that. We still will have to have those meetings and communicate the guidelines, but the format that we have then may have to change. It may be several smaller meetings. It may be more personal meetings with telephone calls or video meetings. We really haven't landed on the exact way that we're going to do that yet, but those expectations should begin being communicated at that time, and then as the season matriculates on, they should continue being communicated to the kids and enforced. Coaches should conduct workouts in pods of students to reduce the number of students working out over a specific period of time. That's a reference to you may have a group of 5 to 6 students that are working out together, and you keep that group of 5 to 6 students as the primary ones that are working out together throughout the course of a week. And you would try to keep that group as far away from the other groups as you can. In some sports, that'd be a lot easier than in other sports. Coaches should rotate the same students together in practice to ensure less exposure in the case that someone develops an infection. And mandatory breaks every 10 minutes should be taken with activities that have a great deal of interpersonal contact. And essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to beat the 15-minute clock here is where they're going with that. Coaches need to keep accurate records for those athletes and the staff that attend each practice and those that are in contact with one another in the event that contact tracing has to take place. If the records are not very well maintained, then the contact tracing process becomes much more difficult much more quickly. Teams should bring their own medical equipment and supplies to events, and parents and guardians should inform coaches if students have been exposed to someone who's known to have had COVID. The general guidelines, their VHSL has released general guidelines for cleaning and disinfecting the athletic equipment, and specific guidelines for each sport have been published. I didn't get into the minutia of all of that within what we're talking about tonight, but they have gone through in fairly much detail, what they expect you to do and how they expect you to do it. The other point of emphasis that we've gotten is failure to follow their guidelines and recommendations. And when they talk about that, they're talking about facility capacity. Spectators could result in fines, $300 fine, putting a program on probation, and the program just being completely shut down. And that's a point that they did emphasize, that they would be looking at that, and the consequences would come through if the guidelines were not rigidly followed. Spectators should consider watching sports at home rather than attending in-person events. I'm going to tell you how we can do that in just a second. So I know that's not typical for a high school. Attendance can't exceed the lesser of 50% of the occupancy load, or 250 people. For sports played on a field, there is a 250-person limit. When you're looking at the occupancy load and sports being played on a field, the limits that you're talking about, the capacity limitations basically are the participants, the spectators, the administrator, the coaches, basically all people that are in attendance for the event. Now, the governor's order that came out last week on the 13th of November also has bearing on this. Essentially, what the governor's order tells us is the number that we are allowed is the participants, the coaches, essential staff members, and then 25 spectators. And that is your limit, and that is going to supersede the guidelines that the VHSL has given prior to this. Next, we're going to talk about face covering guidelines. And the really, with all the different facets of face coverings, from the students to the adults to the coaches to the spectators, the one key word that you really are looking at is really what you look for when you're in a classroom, and it's active engagement in the activity. So essentially, if someone is participating in an activity, they are actively engaged. If they are playing basketball, they are not expected to be wearing a face covering while they are actually playing the game. When the face coverings that kids do wear, they should be face coverings that aren't distracting. While they're on the sideline, in the dugout, anytime they're actually not actively involved, they're to wear the face covering. Participants must wear the face coverings when they travel to and from events using school transportation. And the recommendation from VHSL was that in cheer, participants wear face coverings at all times. Officials and coaches are not required to wear face coverings, again, while they are actively engaged. So essentially what they're saying is while you have a referee who's out calling the basketball game, they're not required to wear the face covering while they are actively participating in that. However, they are encouraged to wear them to the greatest extent possible. So essentially the VHSL is telling us that they don't have to wear them, but they would like them to if they can while they're officiating. Coaches must wear face coverings when on the field, in the dugout, or on the court, and all must wear face coverings when interacting with any types of table workers or field personnel. Any spectators, people working the event staff, any kind of non-competing participants, coaches, everyone else has to wear face coverings at all times. Next, we'll move into our locker room usage. So again, as with the cleaning of the areas, your host school is responsible for providing a clean, disinfected environment for your visiting teams. Again, so they come in, the expectation is the area is ready to go, just like the example of after school and going to work out. The expectation is after the area has been cleared, then you get the area ready for the next group coming in. The locker room area should be large enough to maintain social distancing. If the locker room area isn't large enough to maintain social distancing, visiting teams may want to consider coming to the contest already clothed so they don't have to change clothes, or they may consider even limiting the number of people that go on the travel squad. The other option that you have with locker rooms is for the usage to be done in shifts. So you may have to have 10 kids at a time go in and change clothes and then come out, which isn't an entirely bad idea, because if you do that, you're also minimizing the time that they may linger in there if you're getting them in smaller groups and getting them out a little more quickly. The VHSL has given, again, pretty specific guidelines for the cleaning of locker rooms. I'm not going to get into that, but they are published. Transportation. So physical distancing should be created between children on school buses when possible. For example, seat children one per seat, seat every other row, or staggered aisles and windows. Capacity should be limited to optimize the distance between the passengers. If you cannot have a 6 foot of distance maintained while on the bus, wearing of face coverings is strongly encouraged. Children such as siblings living together, they are allowed to sit on the bus together. The problem that you have with that is if you're staggering kids on the bus in an aisle row and a window row, and you have a seat with two together, then you really are going to have to skip a seat. So you really don't save anything by sitting siblings together or someone that may live together. If possible, given the age of the students, the weather conditions, consider opening the windows to improve ventilation in the bus. Again, the VHSL has given us guidelines for bus cleaning. Essentially, we've actually Mr. Pappas has put a lot of time and effort into making sure our buses, we have a good flow for the kids riding the buses daily and the cleaning and disinfecting of them. So essentially, what we will do is we'll follow those guidelines that we have in place for buses for any kind of athletic transportation. And all of that more than meets what we need to do for what the VHSL is going to require from us. Okay, next we'll talk a little bit about the actual seasons, what they're going to look like. And what those seasons are going to look like right now is called the Championships Plus One. Okay? Each sport will play 60% of the normal contests allowed. And for football, we'll have 7 dates to play 6 games. Any game that cannot be played due to a COVID-related issue will not be called a forfeit this year. It's going to be just referred to as a game not played. Typically, if a team has to pull out of the game, it's a forfeit, and the one that didn't pull out gets the win there. Now it's just a game that hasn't been played. The calendar that the VHSL's put out allows 1 week for regional tournaments and 1 week for state semifinal and finals. Teams that do not participate in region or state tournaments are allowed to schedule one more game. So essentially, that's where your +1 comes. You've got your regular season and your regions, +1 being the state, or if you're not a region or a state competitor, it's your regional seasons plus an additional game. And again, the regular seasons being referred to as 60% of your normal schedule. Each region will advance one team to the state tournament in all sports, and team state championships will be hosted by the team that's at the top of the bracket if the venue meets the VHSL state tournament site requirements. Otherwise, the game will be played in a geographic location that's good for both and can meet those requirements. Looking more at the championships +1, your state championships will only be one-day events when possible, and basically they're doing this to reduce team, school expense, and overnight accommodations, and it makes it almost impossible for us to put in all the mitigating factors with a group of kids overnight in that type of a setting. Wrestling will be an 8-person bracket for a one-day state tournament. Cross country will advance to the state champion based on the regional finish, one team and the top 5 individuals. Indoor track will qualify 3 top regional finishers in each event. Outdoor track will qualify the 4 top regional finishers in each event. Swimming and diving, the top 4 regional finishers in each event. Boys golf will qualify 1 team and 3 individuals per region. And girls golf will qualify through zone qualifiers. So they're not going to be automatic qualifiers per the school or the area. Okay, looking a little bit now at a few of the factors that we are putting in place locally regarding athletics. We've developed a return to athletics plan, and it was developed in following the VHSL return to participation guidelines to help and give the coaches more of a roadmap of what they need to do on a daily basis in the sports. One thing that we do have in there is if the head coach has to quarantine, then that sport is going to stop until the coach comes off of quarantine. And the reasoning behind that is with us specifically, the head coach in the area is the one that we have that has the expertise, and the head coach is the one who is also our school-based contact for the sport. So in that instance, that's the person that we rely on to do everything, the contact and the person that has the expertise. So that would really be the only thing that would completely stop everything from going, aside from a large number of kids getting the virus. But we're working right now with CHKD to develop a return to play guidelines. And I guess when we say return to play, I'm sure you're all familiar with the protocol for a concussion return to play. So what we are doing right now is working with CHKD to develop similar guidelines, but for someone that has had COVID. The athletic trainer, I think I said this earlier, will complete the health screenings and temperature checks for each student athlete prior to the student athlete beginning practice, and student athletes will not be able to practice without the health screening. Several school divisions in the surrounding area have elected not to participate in winter sports. As of now, all of the Bay Rivers district teams are participating in winter sports. While we're aware of what some of the schools have recommended and what some of their discussion has been, it really is a moving target. Right now, as many of the places are taking it to their school boards, they are talking about it. They are looking at the health conditions of what's going on. So decisions, kind of like we are now, they're actively being made in the entire process. In travel, we're considering the allowance for more student-parent travel. Typically it's especially at high school, you expect the kids to ride the bus with you, for numerous reasons. But given the circumstances, this may be the time where we ease up on that a bit. We plan on actually streaming athletic events similar to how we do our monthly school board meetings. And we hope to have the capability to stream at least 3 events simultaneously. So when they are recommending that you stay at home and watch sports, we hope to have the capability of actually doing that. I know that we can do it. We're working on getting the stuff in to do that now. So at least for this year, the plan that we have is to make sure and work out streaming those on YouTube, again, as we do these meetings. Several high schools in the Bay Rivers District have recommended to the school board offices that no spectators be allowed at athletic events. Again, this is a moving target, and schools are recommending things to school boards at this point. Schools are discussing it. School boards are discussing what they're going to do. They're still looking at the health conditions in the region and what's going on. So I don't know that we can land on anything specific. I know the Bay Rivers District coaches and principals will vote on this, and it could be that the district as a whole determines that they won't have spectators. At this point, essentially what we've talked through is our decisions will be based a little bit more on current health data and where we're at and what it looks like to try to make the right decision for everyone that's involved. Okay. So our seasons are completely different now than they are on a typical year. Season 1, which is going to be winter sports. Season 1 is going to be basketball, indoor track, sideline cheer, and sideline cheer will continue on. It's not listed again on the next slides, but it continues on through the next one. Swim and dive. However, I will say right now we don't have a facility that will allow us to use it for swim and dive. And wrestling. If you look, the only, I think, acronym that you may not be familiar with on this chart is MPR, and that's just your minimum practice requirement before they can actually have an event. Essentially, your seasons, the first practice is beginning somewhere around the beginning of December, with everything concluding somewhere around mid-February. I can come back to these if you need me to. Season 2 is going to be fall sports. That's going to be competition cheer, cross country, field hockey, football, golf, and volleyball. Your first practice is somewhere around the beginning of February, just depending upon the sport, and then you are finishing around the end of April with these sports. And season 3, basketball, soccer, softball, tennis, and track and field. And our first practice is going to be around mid-April and finishing up toward the end of June for most sports there. And if you'll notice, I didn't review it, but it tells you the number of contests. The only thing that we had specified in the earlier slide was football, but all of these give you the number of contests that you're allowed to have for each sport. And that's 60% of what the normal contests are. We also have academic activities that are sponsored by the VHSL that this kind of throws a wrench into. I believe we have theater and Scholastic Bowl that would fall into this, but as you can see, it alters the dates and what goes on with those events also. And that's what I have. If you have any questions?
Got a question about the coach thing.
Yes.
So can that be revisited at all? Because if Mr. Tillett gets COVID, you're not shutting down the entire school system until he gets back.
Yeah.
I
That's
agree
just incredibly
completely.
I agree.
Can it be the coach and the assistant coach?
Yeah, I think we can absolutely look at it. I think it probably is dependent really on the personnel that you have. And in some cases, it probably would be prudent to continue on, and in some cases, it probably would not be prudent to continue on, just dependent upon what you have. But, just off the top, just going to say, okay, for this sport we do it, with this sport we won't do it. I think really it depends on the dynamics that you have in play. I think.
Well, are there any sports that only have one coach?
They all have assistant coaches, but you have some sports you have more assistants, and some sports you have volunteer assistants that can come in. Some sports have a slew of adults that are in there helping out, and some don't. And the problem, and as most of you all are pretty familiar with athletics, you know about, is sometimes finding coaches, especially your contacts in the school, is a commodity. So in some cases, you've got more in the school, in some cases, you have fewer.
So can that be a decision based on, with the athletic director and Dr. Sayak, case by sport?
Situational.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we'll certainly
Based
take a
on
look at that
personnel.
and make that decision on an independent basis. This was kind of a general swipe at trying to find a way to make sure we could ensure that these mitigation strategies were consistent. But we'll make that on an individual basis and not make a cost block decision about ending sports. We'll do that only when it's necessary. Yeah.
Well, and I think that, not only would Dr. Shack and Mr. Bennett be involved with that, but obviously something that big, Mr. Tillett would be involved with also. So.
I do have one other comment regarding face masks.
Make them part of a uniform.
Yes, just so we're not worried about what different students wear. Amazing, thank you. You know where I was headed.
Actually, didn't you? I believe you all have already ordered them, even haven't you?
Not my law firm has some, I'd be glad to donate to the cause, masks.
Anybody else?
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next up is our financial update with Ms. Woodruff.
All right. Good evening, Chairman Carter and members of the school board. For the finance report, I wanted to review the budget calendar for the upcoming fiscal year 22 budget process, as it's time to move on to the next year's budget. Last week, the division leadership had a budget kickoff meeting, and budget submissions from principals and directors will be due on December 3rd. Throughout the budget process, we will also meet with the benefits committee to get input on our benefits, and intent forms for next year's employment will be completed by staff in January. We anticipate that the governor's budget proposal will be released on December 16th. However, we will not receive the calc tool from the state at that time. Usually it's into January before we know what this means for us for state funding. On January 13th, the General Assembly session convenes. FY22 is the second year of the biennium, so it's a shorter session which should end February 26th. At the January 19th work session, Mr. Tillett will present a budget update based on the governor's budget proposal. On February 16th, Mr. Tillett will present the proposed budget at the school board work session. There will be a public hearing on the proposed budget at the March 16th school board meeting. The school board will also consider approval of the budget at that meeting. If you decide not to approve it at that meeting, a special meeting would need to be added so we can move forward with the school board approved budget to the city by the end of March. On April 26th, there's a planned joint meeting with the school board and city council for a budget discussion. And there will be opportunities for public input. The superintendent will seek faculty and staff input on the budget. Parents and community members are encouraged to attend the public hearing on March 16th. Input can also be provided through Let's Talk, which can be accessed through the PCPS website. Additionally, you may contact the superintendent by calling or sending him an email. And we do appreciate your input and continued support. And that concludes my report. And you do have a copy of the budget calendar at your seat as well.
Thank you, ma'am. And next is operations update with Mr. Pappas.
Good evening, School Board Chairman Carter and Superintendent Tillett. As you know, I've got food service, transportation, maintenance. So I've got 79 slides. No, I decided to withdraw those. So maintenance, as you know, we received some funding, and with your help, we were able to push up the HVAC installation at PHS Gym, and that work is actually already begun. The electricians have been there, got it into the panel, we've got it up in the rafters, and we've got the December 30th deadline, and we're hitting the key date, so I'm really thrilled with that. We also got a grant through the hard work and identification and the pulling and pushing between myself and Antonia, the educational component. Tara's been gracious enough to give us some money that we could install touchless faucets and flushometers in our schools. And, you know, this will have a bigger impact on the overall well-being and health of faculty, staff, and guests long after COVID has gotten out of here, because the flu is around and we know that germs spread through touching, etc. We're also working now to, after we moved all the furniture into the trailers, we're now taking the furniture out of the trailers to accommodate the 6-foot distancing. That's being completed with the help of the maintenance staff, who's done a great job. Now, the modernization, which everybody's excited about, November 8th, we went out, the advertisements went out. November 16th, which was yesterday, the contract documents were available to prospective bidders. December 1st, the mandatory pre-bid will be taking place for those contractors who decide they want to participate. And on the 15th, we actually do the bid opening. So that's like Christmas in December. Go figure. Custodial staff is busy cleaning and getting prepared to clean and getting sprayers, and we just can't wait to spray everything. And it's important, and we do it, and they have been on the spot every time we've needed them, all kidding aside. So food service, I just need to give a shout out to Emily Forrest and Tina Wolf and the whole Aramark team. Without their help, we wouldn't be as successful as we are. Emily has been relentlessly putting out messages through all the various social medias. And parents, I want to thank you for coming and availing yourself of the free meals. What people don't really understand is that food service at PCPS has to be self-funded. If it isn't self-funded, then we take money away from the educational side, the taxpayer that wants kids to be educated. We need that money then to support food service. Well, we've been very fortunate in that we have been able to be self-funded for many years, and the federal government decided all students could have all meals free for the rest of this school year. So even if you don't, I don't want anybody to think that, oh, I'm precluding someone else from having a meal. You're actually keeping our staff employed and keeping school dollars in the educational component when you take advantage of these meals. So yes, you know, I know my granddaughter's got to have a special breakfast or lunch, so she may not avail herself, but anybody who can, please get the free breakfast when you come to school, the free lunch when you leave, and on Mondays and Thursdays, please come and get the food. Now, next Monday, as you all know, if you've been going, we're going to distribute for the whole week, so our food service staff don't have to work Thursday, and we appreciate everybody's assistance with that. And that concludes, are the slides ready? No. That concludes my presentation.
Thanks, sir. Questions there? Awesome, thanks. And next up is public comment, and we do have public comments.
Yes, sir, we do have several comments. We have Mr. Ford.
Okay. Give me 1 second before, you can come on up, sir. That's
Here.
right there, yes, sir. I would like to point out that we have a number of pages of public comment that were submitted through various repositories, I guess. We had a total of 49 public comments that we all have a copy of and that we have all read and discussed, and so that's there. And for anyone making a public comment, it is limited to 3 minutes. We ask that it just remain civil, directed towards the board and those.
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
First
sir.
off, my name is Gabe Ford. I am a senior and a member of the varsity baseball team. First off, I would like to thank all of you guys for allowing us, my fellow athletes, parents, and some coaches for being here and talking tonight. For COVID-19, this summer my travel ball team, we have played over 40 games with over 100 kids in our program and all their families. days, and we have not had one positive test. With strict rules of social distancing, we as a community can make that possible, but we can't make that possible without an opportunity. So with that being said, as well as since COVID-19 has came upon us, there has been in high school dropouts and suicide is at an all-time high for the last 10 years. So when you guys make those votes, just please think about every which possible way, and thank you guys for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time and your comments.
Y'all know he's playing baseball in the fall at Bluefield College, right?
Right, he is. Good job, Gabe.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Good evening. Can I take this off?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you keep it civil, address the whole board, those kinds of things. That's
Absolutely. So
right
somebody
here.
will
Yeah.
raise their hand when I'm going over. I will shut up at that minute and I'll walk off. Okay. First of all, I really want to tell you I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk to you. I really do say this in all honesty. I believe this is a group of patriots trying to do the right thing for our kids. Okay. Well, first of all, let me tell you, I'm Gabe Sava. Lisa is my wife. I'm a move-in. I'm not just a move-in into Poquoson. I'm actually a move-in into the United States. In 1985, I was an immigrant here, and I came from an oppressive government. My dad escaped from Romania, and some of you that follow world and what was going on in 1989, that whole entire regime fell. My dad risked his life for me to be here. I was 10 years old, and I'm telling you that I remember this as a kid, that what an oppressive government does. It's like a rock that's on your chest. You go to bed and the rock is there. You wake up and there's no room to breathe. Why would I even bring that up in here? I want to tell you that when I came to the United States, even as a 10-year-old in 1985, I remember the rock being off my chest. Okay, the rock was off my chest. You could say what was on your mind. You could do. You weren't worried about what the government was going to say about where you worshipped or all the crazy things that went on in that communist government. Why are we even talking about this? And the reason that I'm talking about this and the reason I'm standing in front of you is because I really don't think this thing is just as small as sports in school. Okay, sports in school I think are absolutely important. Okay, but I personally believe that we've allowed this virus to stand in the way of life, liberty, and the pursuit of our happiness here in the United States. And I'm here because I believe that there's a room of patriots that are willing to stand up for our kids and fight the little battles, get back to school, get back into sports, because that is life. I've seen this virus divide our country. It is insane. It's crazy that you can think that with what's going on, there's fear everywhere. There's division. There's hatred. People that would say all kinds of crazy things to you and I because of certain things. I've heard, and don't take this the wrong way, I've heard people talk about, how we all need to be safe. And I know that that's said in all good intentions, but what are we paying for that? right? Our kids are cooked up for all the daylight hours in their rooms looking at a computer screen and learning, right? We have no activities. One of the things that I'm seeing out of my kids that's really bugging me is apathy. If they're just walking away, they're just like, whatever. It doesn't matter. Nothing's going to change. I see depression, right? We're falling behind. I really believe that you all want to do the right thing. I really do that. I honestly believe that every one of you want to do the right thing. And the right thing a lot of times just takes boldness. It takes us stepping out of where we are and not just doing the things that are easy. So I'm asking you, and I'll be praying for you each and every day as you all meet, that you continue to do that for our kids. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. See you, Craig. Wow.
We'll start off like Gabe did and say thank y'all for allowing us to speak tonight. I'm Ethan. I'm a senior at Poquoson High School. I play football. I've played for about 12 years now. I believe that with sports, I think we should have them because you build bonds with your teammates and your coaches that are very hard to come by in a lot of people's lives, and a lot of opportunities after high school with sports is college athletics, which with me and Gabe, I'm blessed to actually say I've earned offers through football playing sports to Poquoson, and that I believe that if the students don't have opportunities to play sports, that some of them don't have the chance to go to college because they don't have enough money, and that sports are some of their only ways out of Poquoson. And that dropout rates are at an all-time high for 10 years. It's over 16 million. It was the last time I saw when I looked it up. And then I believe, on the field, we can keep each other safe by wearing a mask, not sharing water. You see NFL, it's through certain cups, and then getting tested before games and after games to make sure before you go back to school, on Friday nights or Wednesday nights. And then the life lessons you learn through sports in a small community like ours. And then that's all I have to say. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time.
Do I speak here? Thank you for having me. My name is Jackson Harper, and I'm a current senior at Poquoson High School. Let me start by saying that I'm thankful to not have your job right now. I cannot imagine the pressure all of you have been under from intense emails and from the public and from the state legislators in Richmond. As a 4-year member and captain of the varsity basketball team, as well as a 3-year member of the varsity soccer team, I am proud to represent Poquoson as a student athlete. While I could stand here and explain how we have already been deprived of great opportunities, such as a certain state championship run for soccer last year, or the excitement of leading the football student section senior year, I will not do that. I understand that you all have heard enough of that, so I'll save you the repetition. Instead, I would like to focus on the fact that there is very little evidence to support not only the inability to play sports, but the continued closure of schools. Perhaps the greatest statistic to back this point is that according to Max Preps, 35 states are currently playing public high school football with no negative effects. Some states, such as Tennessee, have completed a full fall sports season, which began in July or August. Additionally, private schools both locally and across the nation have been playing high school football this fall and have been playing or will begin their basketball season tonight. Travel sports have been competing since June with no negative side effects. So this raises the question, do these schools and travel teams have different risks to coronavirus than we do? While I recognize that some are justifiably afraid and at risk of true suffering from this virus, sacrifices have to be made. We are willing to make any accommodations in order to be able to gain back our ability to play sports and go to school, like so many have been doing for months now. If certain individuals have circumstances that necessitate a complete isolation from risk of contracting the virus, that is understood. However, these select circumstances cannot sideline the majority of student athletes who need sports. We need them not only for the benefits of competition, but for our physical and mental health, especially in the current state of the world we live in. The negative side effects on youth and parents of not playing outweigh any concerns associated with playing high school sports by far. I ask tonight for your vote that you vote to let us play, and that you continue to do so for the rest of the school year. In this time of uncertainty, we need to take advantage of every opportunity that we have. So please let us play. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for coming out, sir.
Good evening. I'm a parent of a youth wrestler who also plays football, basketball, and baseball. I'm also a board member of the Poquoson Athletic Association. I believe there is no reason high school and youth wrestling cannot have a season this winter, more specifically all high school sports. Poquoson has already gone above and beyond with the safety measures in place for our children to return to school, whereas other surrounding school systems have not. And I can guarantee that as I have immediate family who works in other school systems. They do not monitor or offer health screenings like PCPS. With these safety measures already in place, I believe that each sports team will ensure the same precautions and screenings. As a mother of an 8-year-old who's in sports year-round, I feel it is important that all children, kindergarten through 12th grade, have an outlet with healthy and safe engagements. My son is also borderline ADD and ADHD. Since sports have stopped, it has been hard for him to focus and find structure that he needs and to stay motivated with school, as well as I'm sure as other kids. We parents are willing and committed to support the coaches and the school system to keep everyone safe while giving our children what they need and they deserve. You never know how sports can impact our youth and what they might be dealing with. My son personally has benefited from sports over the last few years dealing with grief and loss. We don't know what any child is going through kindergarten through 12th grade. I ask you on the school board to consider mental health with our students. It's very important and sports are their outlet. Please let them learn better and please let them play sports. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Greetings. My name's Nick Mastrojanakis. I am a retired soldier. Been Gabe's travel baseball coach since he was 10. Been doing this coaching thing for a long time. I'm now recently in the college ranks. So all the young men who've played for me over the summer, like Gabe stole my thunder, that was my line. But that's all right. We've been in countless hotels. We're high-fiving, we're hugging, we're spitting seeds. We're doing everything you guys say can't be done. And we're doing it, and we're not positive at all. I understand you want the best for the kids. My son was tested positive with COVID 5 months ago. Not one sign. Not one sign. You guys got my big letter, so I won't redo it. But as I sat outside watching YouTube, I noticed the 6 feet apart not really applies in here. I realized we don't have a whole lot of room, but I noticed a lot of things from camera angles. A lot of people didn't have masks on the whole time. People aren't socially distanced, and so why we do as I say, not as I do? Is that what we're doing? I don't know what the vote is here today, but my kids came and asked me to speak for them. I've coached Gabe, Jackson, and Ethan since they were 10, since I moved into this town. And what this is doing is, if you take a kid off a field, that's what they live for. It's for that huddle. It's for that locker room. It's for that dugout. It's for those practices. It doesn't matter if it's band, if it's volleyball, if it's track. It's that camaraderie that they need. That's what sports gives. And it also teaches them rules, right? Rules they don't have now because they're virtually learning. What they're learning is Google has all the answers. Google's has all the answers. We don't have to do it. Just get them back in the classroom. Just get them on the baseball field, get them on the football field, get them out there so they can remember this. I have a senior, and it's very passionate to me that he remembers this. He has a chance to play college baseball too, but he doesn't want to. So that's fine. But the sports is what brings them all together. The activities is what brings them all together. Whoever brought up the assistant coaches thing was a great point, because yeah, if we can learn virtually, we can coach virtually too. So, or at least your assistant coaches know stuff. I'm one.
Video in.
Say again?
You can video in.
Yeah, video editor.
All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you. All the public comment. Well, thank you all so much for taking time out of your evening to sit through the first part of the meeting and to come out and give us your comments. We appreciate it, especially the students. I think that's awesome that they came out to address the board. That's not an easy thing to do. It took courage, and I just appreciate that. Next is consent agenda. Ms. Sue, would you like to walk us through that, please?
Yes, the consent agenda will include the approval of our financial reports, the approval to accept and change appropriations, and to accept and expend funds in accordance with request, approval of personnel action, the approval of minutes of the October regular meeting, and the authorization to dispose of surplus property.
Thank you, ma'am. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? And a second?
Second.
Ms. Reimers?
Mr. Freeman. Aye. Mr. Ingram.
Aye.
Mr. Jordan.
Aye.
Mr. Holcomb.
Aye.
Mrs. Hessel. Aye. Vice Chair Sheeler.
Aye.
Chairman Carter.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next up is consideration of approval of the 2020-21 calendar amendment. Like to speak to that, or have we covered those pieces?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, they were covered in Dr. Fox's presentation.
Okay.
They're primarily because of the schedule changes that we have with the transition of secondary students back in school.
I just want to make sure that was all covered. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments there? Right, Ms. Reimers.
Who made the motion? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Mr. Holcomb.
Holcomb.
Mr. Freeman.
Aye.
Mr. Ingram.
Aye.
Mr. Jordan.
Aye.
Mr. Holcomb.
Aye.
Ms. Hessel.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sheeler.
Aye.
Chairman Carter.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Next item, consideration approval for 2020-2021 VHSL return to play. Do I have a motion to approve? And a second?
Second.
I mean, I think Ms. Radlett did a great job. It was very
Yes, sir.
thorough, and I thought everything was very well done.
I'd just like to add, just to make sure that everyone's on the same page. We need to revisit that head coach line in there. That it needs to be by sport, and we need to
Agreed.
have more than one person, because that's just.
Thank you, I agree
take care of that.
100%.
Aye.
Oh, right there.
Yep.
Ms. Reimers?
Mr. Freeman.
Aye.
Mr. Ingram.
Aye.
Mr. Jordan.
Aye.
Mr. Holcomb. Ms. Hessel.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sheeler.
Aye.
Chairman Carter.
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, ma'am. Next up, communications. Mr. Tillett, do you have anything to add?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
It's all you, Cassidy. Take it away.
Thank you. Poquoson Primary School has a successful first quarter of the year thanks to our fantastic students, families, and staff. Our students are becoming Canvas experts very quickly. Our preschool class took a walking trip to the Municipal Park Trail to look for pine cones, sticks, and trees as part of their tree unit. The preschool class also decorated a banner to share with the Churchill sailors in recognition of Veterans Day. Students and staff dressed as their favorite book characters and shared about them with classmates. Our PTO is encouraging reading at home with the Readathon fundraiser, with all funds raised going towards classroom instructional supplies. We successfully completed our fall safety drills to include fire drills, intruder drills, earthquake drills, and bus evacuation drills. Students also enjoyed cardio drumming during recess this past week and loved the structured recess activities provided by our PE teacher, Ms. Stever.
Breakfast and lunch in the classroom continue to go smoothly, allowing our students time to talk with each other and build friendships at school. To promote our staff's social, emotional well-being, we offered a month-long self-care challenge and gave out raffle prizes to the staff with the highest participation. Poquoson Primary School is so grateful for the support from our families and community and wish everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Art, music, Spanish, PE, library, and technology are alive and flourishing at the Poquoson Elementary School. In art during the first quarter, online students did drawings that taught them about the elements of art. The in-person students did drawings that incorporated what the students learned virtually. For the second quarter, students are doing projects based on different color theories. In music, during the first quarter, students learned about the 7 elements of music: melody, harmony, rhythm, tempo, dynamics, form, and texture, and engaged with the content on discussion boards. In in-person music class, students have been learning about the lives and music of famous composers such as Mozart and Beethoven. In the second quarter, students will travel back in time to learn about styles of music that existed in the past, starting with the medieval era and ending with the 20th century rock and roll. In Spanish, students have been learning about Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead. This is celebrated every year on November 1st and 2nd in Mexico and other Latin American countries and communities. It's a joyous occasion filled with traditions for honoring and celebrating the lives of deceased families and friends. In the library, our biggest hit has been contactless library book ordering and delivery through our online catalog, Destiny. In addition to book checkout, students have had virtual activities encouraging reading on epic books and the Global Read Aloud Book Planet Omar Accident Trouble Magnet. We have included some STEM activities, including making bats and decorating turkeys. We have also explored holidays like Veterans Day and Thanksgiving. The third grade hybrid students worked together with an unplugged network sorting activity that integrated computer science with math standards of learning. Students, acting as a computer, compared place value, which sorted their answers from least to greatest. Students reinforced their math skills while collaborating, solving problems, and supporting one another in this self-assessing activity. The social and emotional health of our students continues to be a focus at Poquoson Middle School. Our school counselor hosts lunch brunches to provide students opportunities to eat lunch together, making new connections and promoting social interaction. Our all-in character education program is focusing on gratitude for the month of November. Students were asked to think about what and who they are thankful for, as well as ways they can express gratitude. Students were encouraged to complete a 30-day gratitude challenge. Many students submitted gratitude messages for students, and these messages were compiled into a special video message for our staff. Inside our virtual classrooms, students have been participating in mock crime scenes and forensic science, taking virtual field trips in world cultures, and immersing themselves in literature, discovering the influence these authors have had on the genres today, just to name a few. Poquoson Middle School would like to thank the parents and community for their continued support and collaboration. We are wrapping up our first marking period at the end of this week and will be starting our new schedule on Monday, November 30th. Report cards for the first marking period will be released on December 4th for Poquoson Middle School. Poquoson High School successfully concluded the first quarter and is charging full speed ahead into the second quarter. Students engaged in virtual labs, developed digital portfolios, delivered persuasive speeches, were introduced to interactive presentation tools, Pear Deck, and much more. Over the last month, our SEA hosted our Homestaying Spirit Week, and we enjoyed seeing the many costumes and spirit displays as our students engaged in virtual learning. Our school counseling department hosted numerous virtual college visits for the class of 2021 and class of 2022, and will host the second college application workshop for the class of 2021 tomorrow. Counselors also conducted Freshman 101 sessions, where they talked about mindfulness, virtual communication with teachers, and having a successful freshman year. Many extracurricular activities are operating virtually, such as DECA, Scholastic Bowl, and Virtual Stage Crew, while Key Club is hosting the Fall Food Drive through the end of this week. Donations to support the parish food pantry may be made at the PHS main entrance. Success continues throughout the school community through academics, extracurricular involvement, service projects, and much more. Be sure to check out our website and weekly family newsletters
for the latest accomplishments of our students and events within our school community. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Freeman.
And I'd like to thank all the comments that people made. As you said earlier, we have a whole list. Community participation is great. I'd like to thank our speakers that actually came out tonight, particularly our students, as you mentioned. It just kind of reinforces that our school systems are producing the right caliber people. When you see individuals out and speak like that, have the courage to do so. So kudos. Just in general, everybody on this board either has a student in the school system, had a student in the school system. And we want the same thing y'all want. We want our kids in school as quickly, safely as possible. We want them to play sports. Just remember that. We're all in the same boat here. And now that sports are allowed, let's go win some championships.
Thank you. Mr. Ingram.
Yeah, I'd like to recognize Jamie Steigerwald again, for their accomplishment of the thank all the staff that's been involved with the transition to get the secondary students back to school. Dr. Ratcliffe for putting together the presentation. Under sports, and want to thank the Poquoson Police Department for being here as well, and people that were outside, that were supporting, the sports. Want to thank them for braving the cold, and I want to thank the speakers, the athletes and the coaches that came here to speak tonight. Thank you.
Just wanted to thank the countless emails and pages upon pages of public comment, that was put forth to the board. It's all information that for the last couple of days we've reviewed in its entirety and reading that feedback and suggestions, so we appreciate that. Wanted to congratulate our students of the month. Having been a former student of the month way back when, one of the best parts of being student of the month was the parking space right outside the front door. So, and Emma, that they don't get to experience that. So, and I'm sitting next to a former valedictorian, by the way, but runner-up, salutatorian.
Yeah, it's a runner-up.
But at the end of the day, the recent, I'm currently a Virginia high school league coach and have been for many years. I'm actually the boys varsity basketball coach at Grafton High School. It's the only time that when I come to Poquoson that I'm actually against Poquoson, and that's only because I coach the team. But I'm from Poquoson and bleed, maroon and gold in so many ways. But the recent governor mandate to reduce, it's great that sports are moving forward, but the impact of that now, with that decision made on Friday to reduce the amount of attendees to 25 patrons, that's a game changer. That means that some of our seniors that have spent all summer and all year leading up to their senior year to go support, like Jackson said, to lead the the football team and the cheering section, or Gabe is a big advocate of attending the basketball games and yelling my name across the court at times. That opportunity is another thing that these seniors are going to miss out on. So I'd love to see some movement, and hopefully things, that mandate's lifted. And it was originally 250, as Dr. Ratliff mentioned, but it's down to 25 now. So, we want to maybe even shift some focus there, because, a lot of seniors won't have a chance to watch their fellow seniors compete. And it'll be lucky to have their parents in attendance at those games. So, thanks.
Mr. Freeman and Mr. Jordan, in my notes, obviously, you usually get to go first. I think that's the old guy's privilege or something. I think let's get that straight before next December. Right? I too read all the public comments, read them today, and I agree with almost every one of them. We're all it's let my children go, or it's keep my children safe. It's both. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, myself. There's a couple of, I think we're all parents, a couple grandparents on that end of the bench down there, I think. But, so we all have a stake, a personal stake, and we have the same minds. I love the peaceful demonstration out by Victor. That was nice. I drove through very hesitantly, but it went really well, so that was good. Really showing, what our community's about, what our parents are willing to do to make their point. I think it was great. So, all of, I'm not medical either. I don't have that hat either. I'm not a medical guy. So all my thoughts are kind of anecdotal, but I think, at some point we have to take a step and say, let's go. There's a risk here. This is the same week where we've had, or same month where we've had a 33% increase in COVID cases in Poquoson. That's no small number. However, I think administration has done a great job of keeping us leaning forward on this throughout, from August forward. Proud to be a part of what you're doing, Superintendent Dillon. Thank you for what you're doing. I think it's time to go, and let's win some championships. That's what I say. Thank you.
I agree with what you said. I will say, and this might be a little unpopular up here, so sorry, not sorry. I know, just like everybody else, I read every single comment, read all the emails. I also have children in the school. I definitely want them back in school. Parents are reached out to us, students are reached out to us. I'm going to urge you to reach out. Because that right now is where our hands are tied. We're constrained by their limits to us. You saw that our superintendent presented what the health district is recommending to us. Push back on them with their current rates and where we've been headed and where we've stayed. That gets us closer to being able to be that 3 foot instead of the 6 foot. That's where it matters. So I would encourage you all, reach out. I can give you a name. I can direct you emails. Email me. I will give you whatever information you want. I am happy to help it. And go play some sports. Very excited about that.
Awesome. Thank you very much. That's great advice, Ms. Sheila.
Sometimes Poquoson feels like such a safe place to live. It's an island, really. After all, we've been written up as one of the 10 safest towns to live in this country. It seems a shame that we couldn't keep out the threat of the virus that the rest of the world is experiencing. Your school board teachers and administrators have been asked to have the courage to be different, but I suggest that it takes great courage to make these hard choices, and there's no perfect decision for all. We're all really hurting. I wanted to sincerely thank every parent who expressed their understanding and support of the tremendous efforts of our small but mighty school board administration. Superintendent Artie Tillett and Vice Superintendent Antonio Fox and all the staff have worked tirelessly to make our hybrid return to in-person learning feasible. It's going to happen as soon as it can be done wisely. Have patience. I thank every IT person who's worked patiently to get the kinks out of online learning. It's not easy. Have patience. I thank every parent who's had to help their children adapt to this new world of online learning. It may well be that many of these online skills learned the hard way will last a lifetime and benefit our students as they advance into the larger world. Have patience. I thank every essential staff member who's contributed to keeping our infection rates low in 100 ways, including cleaning every bus and table and chair and doorknob and restroom to keep everybody safe. Have patience. And finally, I am grateful to our public leaders who've courageously and extensively studied and researched this worldwide pandemic to devise the best plans possible to navigate in this difficult time. In the words of a well-respected businessman who lived to be in his 90s, Arnold Glasow, the key to everything is patience. You get the chicken by hatching the egg, not smashing it. He went on to say, success is simple. Do what's right, the right way, at the right time. A professor of theology, Fulton J. Sheen, said, patience is power. Patience is not an absence of action, it's timing. It waits on the right time to act for the right principles in the right way. And finally, as Cassidy Spakes, our school board student rep, said tonight, success is failure turned inside out. I'm also very excited about the sports coming back, and I'm really hoping to be able to cheer our football team because I love that. Right, Michelle? I'd like to be there with you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to also just reiterate what everybody is. Thanks everybody for coming out and signs of your support and encouragement. All the feedback we've gotten, the support, the understanding, the encouragement. So I would like to thank everybody who just took the time to contact us and to come out and speak, and especially Mr. Sava. That, to me, was over the top. And it was just, moving to me because he had a different perspective. A lot of times we take things for granted since day one. And to get perspective, it was just, that was just, I was very, very impressed. I was very thankful that he came out to speak, as I was with all of them, especially him, because it was just, I don't know. He just struck a chord. So I really, really appreciate out and having the courage to stand up here and talk with us. Have any material for board review? And we will adjourn. Everybody have a happy, safe Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you give her a second.